Thanks for joining this session. I think the DNB session that we just had was a great segue to this session. Most of the technologies and the actions currently in play have been discussed in the slides. What we intend to do in this session is basically to touch upon some of those technologies and try to gather the practical constraints and applicability of those technologies. I have been joined by Mr. Capt. Sanjeev Verma and Mr. Rajnish Khandelwal from Baxi. Captain, if I may start with you. We know there are more than 60 energy-saving technologies currently. It could be either saving on reducing hull resistance, or it could be conditioning the propeller flow, or it could be using renewable assisted propulsion. Which of these you think brings the maximum value to the ship owner? And what's your suggestion, like how can a ship owner decide where to put his money and what should be the right investment strategies to select among this plethora of energy-saving technologies?
Thank you so much. Thanks Kevin and Oaks and Lloyd Money for having us over here. It's $1 million question. Probably if I know that what technology is going to give the best return on the investment, then probably I'll be the most sought after person on the globe. But just to answer and give the perspective that all the different energy saving technologies which are available, one solution cannot fit all. It has to go with that what kind of vessel you are, what is your trade patterns, and also what is the life cycle of the vessel, and what kind of a commercial viability of the vessel you are going to operate. Because for ship owner, any investment into energy saving devices has to be attached to the return on the investment. For example, if we take it as like let's say very capital intensive one, the alternative solution. Those things are basically for a ship owner, for existing vessel, if you ask me. Probably again depends upon the scale of the number of the vessels under the fleet, what kind of ship owner is that, whether it's a bigger ship owner or a smaller ship owner, and if these people are basically ready to get the return through the commercial channel. The second thing is basically which comes to technologies. Now technologies can be also divided into two parts. One is basically the technology what you have it on, which requires it has to be fitted to the vessel, kind of a retrofitting you call it like. And the second technology is basically the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and those kind of things like. To very frank, the low-hanging fruit is definitely the use of technologies or use of IT. Let's put this way. That's a low-hanging fruit like. So for a ship owner, if they are looking in the range of, because again, what kind of technology you are going to impart it is it has to relate it to the future, the ratings of the vessels, the carbon emissions, what you're going to do it like, So if you find yourself on a vulnerable range that if you don't do anything, you are going to fall into the further down and down and down, and the whole value of your vessel is going to be completely out of the market when you're going to have any kind of commercial contracts, then in that case you would go for some kind of a retrofitting. And that retrofitting could be, for me, the best solution at the moment would be air assisted propulsion system, because though it is a capital incentive, but you are looking in the range of 20-25% fuel saving for that. And if you are looking for a low hanging fruit for someone who's been a kind of a mediocre, and he's looking that probably I need to achieve 5 to 10%, then probably some IT related services would be better. Weather routing can be a good option for him, like optimization. Some of the previous panelists has already spoken about predictive maintenance. Because at the end of the day, we need to realize one thing, that the entire carbon emission is related to one of the biggest machinery, which is the main engine fitted on board. If we can tackle that one, then almost 80 to 90% of our problem is solved. That is one thing.
Thanks, Captain Sanjeev. Just building on that, I understand as Captain Sanjeev said, the energy saving technologies are capex intensive. You need to put money, and there has to be some incentive for ship owners to put in that money. And where can the port come into picture? I mean, can port incentivize through port fees or through any regulatory intervention or operational intervention to incentivize the ship owners to have these energy-saving technologies on board and put capex on them? Mr. Rajnish, if you can answer that, sir.
First of all, good afternoon, and thanks to the organizers for having me over here, and also selecting this very important topic on decarbonization, because there's not a seminar these days where you go and you don't talk about it. So thanks for including this topic. In terms of what the ports can incentivize to the ships, I think it's not a question of giving any incentive. We, the ports, would be at a receiving end in few years' time. But the ship owner would say, if you don't have this facility at your port, I'm not going to bring my ship over here. So the ports will have to go through that journey of putting in capital and setting up these infrastructure facilities. Like we saw in the earlier presentation, you need to have electricity provided to the ships, you need to have facility to receive carbon capture, you need to have, in case the ship is running on alternate fuel, you need to have bunkering facilities. So all these facilities you need to set up at your port if you want to be relevant in few years' time. So it's a matter of survival for us in the port sector to have these things, rather than trying to provide some incentive to the ships to bring their ships at our port.
Noted, noted.
So can I put it as a matter of survival for us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a tussle that needs to be managed. At a port level, if you can possibly talk through the decarbonization technologies that the ports are generally focusing on currently, and where do you see the technology progressing going forward?
Well, so a lot of things are happening in the port sector for the decarbonization initiatives, if I may put it. If I were to take you to the entire supply chain, now say a customer sitting in Houston, he wants to import something from India. So what he would be looking out for is wherever your factory is, say Aurangabad. Now how does that product, in case there's a product, how does that product connect all the way from Aurangabad to the nearest port? At the port there will be some warehouse where it will be stored, say in Bhiwandi or Khandelwal, something like this. Then it goes to the CFS for stuffing into a container. Then it goes on a ship and it reaches the end customer over there in Houston. Now, out of the entire supply chain, if you look at it, most of the decarbonization initiatives that we hear about is the shipping leg of it. And why? Because we have the Director General of Shipping, which is doing a wonderful, wonderful job in ensuring that there are milestones which they all have to achieve. But shipping is just one, okay, that's a major part of it, but just one leg. What about the road journey which you did from Aurangabad to here? What about the warehouse sitting in Khandelwal? What about the container freight station? And what about the ports? Now, if your customer has adopted that they are going to reach zero emission for their entire supply chain, so it's not only shipping, but we the ports, we the warehousing, we the logistics player inland, we also have to go through the journey in setting up infrastructure which is net zero or carbon neutral, what we say. So that's where the ports have taken it on themselves. It's not that the IMO has mandated it for me, but the ports have taken it for themselves that you have to go through it to remain relevant. Otherwise, your customer sitting somewhere would say, no, don't bring my cargo from so and so port, please go to an alternate port. So because of this pressure, what we are doing is, some of the initiatives that we have been doing, number one is efficiency in your equipment that you are operating. How much is your energy consumption? Can I switch over to better equipment which requires less of energy? And that's why you're seeing most ports trying to switch over the container operations primarily to start off. The gantries are moving to the gantries, the restackers, the RMTCs, all moving to electrically driven. That's first stage, that you are switching over to equipment which use less of energy. The second one, where is this energy coming from? If I'm taking the energy from the grid, let's understand a fact, India still produces electricity. 53% of my electricity still comes from coal. So I'm still using a fossil fuel to bring that electricity. So the second step the ports are trying to do is, can I get a cleaner source of electricity? Can I get cleaner electricity, which can come from solar, which some ports are already investing a lot of money in that, and the government is very actively working on that, and you can have windmills and other sources of energy. So that's the electricity part for using your equipments and all. The second infrastructure which some of the ports are witnessing is moving on to the port operation, the marine tugs over there. I heard just the previous presentation, it mentioned that three of the ports have mandated that they would be moving to hydrogen fuel tugs. Well, it's still some time away. Okay, that's the final vision to go to it, but I think it will take a few years to achieve that target. The immediate one can be go for electric tugs. Where you don't have a tug which has to go far up outside the creek, we don't have long endurance levels required, then you can easily move electric tugs. So that will be the second investment that the ports will be going through. The third one about the carbon capture, again, it's a little bit long shot as of now. I think a stopgap arrangement which you would see at many of the ports in India would be, in case the ships are using an ISO tank for the carbon capture, that's much easily doable, wherein all the carbon captured is offloaded out of an ISO tank and the port is able to dispose it off as per the mandate. So these are the major areas which we are witnessing at the ports where investment is happening on decarbonization.
Excellent, thank you, thank you. Just taking on the carbon capture part, if I go to Mr. Sanjeev, I understand from a port perspective what are the infrastructure readiness that the carbon capture needs to make. But from a ship operator perspective, what challenges do you see from a carbon capture? Carbon capture provides a very good avenue that ships can continue to use conventional fuel and still be able to reduce their carbon footprint. But there are operational challenges, and I would want your views around that.
So I think before we talk about the carbon capture, I think the first phase of the carbon capture is already in place. When you look at the scrubbers which are fitted on board the vessels, almost like we all know that 80 to 82% of the fuel which is being burned across all the ships, the ocean-going vessels, are fossil fuel, and majority of that is the heavy sulfur fuel. So these first phase, those vessels which are having the scrubbers on board is basically the first phase of the carbon capture. Now the next question comes in that, like, is this technology is feasible in terms of operation? Is it basically a viable solution in terms of commercials? And then what are the facilities we are having on board around the world to offset and offload those, all the byproducts of this system? So the first thing is that if the technology is available, the answer is yes. The technology is very much available because, as I said, the first phase has been already successfully running for the last 5 years, since 2020. What we need to do is basically move into the second phase, which is the your separation of the carbon dioxide from the exhaust gases, and then store it, and then it completes the complete process. So technology is there. The second comes the commercial viability of this solution. We have seen that when 2019, we all knew that IMO 2020 regulations was almost on the doorstep. Suddenly, all the ship owners started going to the shipyards and started putting the scrubbers because we knew that there was a spread between the heavy sulfur and the low sulfur fuel oil. They all taken the bet and they had invested in the scrubbers. All of them has been paid off within few years. Now the thing is that, the same analogy, if you apply that, if tomorrow going to be carbon tax, so what are you going to do? Is if the same analogy is going to apply, then definitely whatever investment I am required to make it into carbon capture system is going to pay off one day. So definitely it is just like, what period we are looking, how much life cycle is remaining for that vessel, and then we can invest into that. The third is basically, I'm coming back to the offloading part, and that's where the challenge is there. Because currently very less ports are available, or very less, the supply chain, you can call it, where these dry ice or the liquid CO2, whatever you want to call it, can be offloaded. There is an enormous use of this byproduct in the shore industry. But with the technology evolving, the different kind of carbon capture systems are coming, and one of the system the byproducts are sodium bicarbonate. That's a solid. You can store it and you can offland it in any of the ports, and it is highly used in the shore industry. So just covering up all this segment, to me currently the most viable solution looks is the carbon capture, but at the same time this is the one area where the people are still not looking very seriously, and I think the ship owner has to go back the same analogy what they have done in 2019 for the scrubber, for the heavy sulfur fuel oil, they have to do it with the carbon capture. Some regulatory challenges are there because still the particulate matter, the PM's regulations are not very clear. I'm very sure that today or tomorrow the IMO will start thinking about it. But then I think these matters can be handled because there is a solution to those kind of problems.
Thank you, thank you. If I may move to the alternate fuels, Mr. Rajnish, if I can address to you. We have seen in the previous session also the LNG new builds are on the rise. We are seeing a lot of new build orders being put for LNG as a transition fuel. How, in terms of the bunkering facilities that could be provided for LNG, are you seeing any traction within India? We know for the fact that there have been vessels calling at Indian ports, LNG container vessels. Do you see any traction around that, and what's your view on that?
Yes, I think LNG bunkering is a big opportunity which lies ahead of us for all of us in India. If you look at traditional fuels, heavy oil and stuff like those, and I think India missed out on setting up the right infrastructure to supply bunkers to the international fleet. And we have next door Fujairah and Singapore, Fujairah on the west and Singapore on the east, which took over and which grabbed that opportunity. If you look at LNG facility, LNG bunkering facility, so we have roughly around, I think some 100 ports around the world which have facility to supply LNG. If you look at the Asian sector, close by a ship going from China to Europe, you have facilities in China, you have in Malaysia and Singapore. After Singapore, you don't have anything for the ship to go on to the west. That's what I think that's a sweet spot which India can fill in. Wherein a ship transiting the Indian subcontinent or the ship coming to India, if we can set up a facility which is facility to supply LNG bunkers. And why? Because number one, the ship are crossing the Indian subcontinent. Second, India has a supply of LNG. We are amongst the largest importer of LNG, and we have a good supply of LNG over here. So if I can set up that infrastructure, now that requires a lot of investment. Yes, so there have been discussions happening between various stakeholders over there, which is the LNG suppliers, the port terminals. If you look at the southern subcontinent, which on the east you have the Ennore port, on the west Cochin port, they have been talking about setting up LNG bunkering facility over there. So these things would come up pretty soon, I feel. And as industry players, here's an opportunity for us to join hands and ensure that this is being set up before we again lose out, just like for the traditional fuel.
Perfect. The other talk of the town in terms of propulsion system globally has been nuclear. Not that talked about in India, but globally people are talking about nuclear. And now with different new technologies like MSR and SMR, the applicability of nuclear as a propulsion system has increased tremendously. I'll open it to both of you. Your views around nuclear as a propulsion in India, and do you see any challenge from an operational perspective or the perspective which the people in general have around nuclear propulsion?
Well, honestly, I have not seen much happening in the Indian sector when it comes to nuclear, and I can foresee there will be a lot of regulatory challenges that may come up over here. But then I'll leave it up to Sanjeev in case you have more updates on that.
I think in every seminars on the decarbonization, this is one of the topic which we talk a lot, but unfortunately, it doesn't end up having a lot of voices in the regulators' body. And then be kind of a stalemate situation where we say that yes, this is the perfect solution, we have it. We build a ship which has run for 25 years and without getting bunkered, but then there's a whole lobby of bunkering force sitting on one side. Who doesn't want to be this thing implemented? So yes, there's a regulatory challenge that is stopping the nuclear to be implemented in commercial shipping. Another challenge in the nuclear field is basically the crew training part. because we should not forget it that the people are there on board the vessel who are going to operate. We are already facing the challenge in the conventional fuel. We are going to face more challenge when we come to the alternate fuels. And the nuclear, we need a different set of regulations and trainings and the different set of rules for building those ships. So those still a couple of white papers has been there in this industry. Of late I was reading probably December 2024, CSSC in China has already given a prototype for 18,000 TEU with the nuclear fuel, and my guess is that probably China would be the first one to build the nuclear fuel vessel, and it is possible.
Thank you. Thank you. Just building on the other avenues of to decarbonize, so the e-fuels or the synthetically developed fuels using direct air capture, how do you see them as a possible avenues to decarbonize in the future? Again, I'm opening it to both of you based on your understanding, if you can answer that.
Again, we'll have to see the regulations to come very clear. Right now, we are sitting down on the EU ETS, which is just started. Fuel EU just started, and I was going to take a very important decision very soon. A lot of uncertainties are there whether we are going to follow tank to wake system or well to wake system. The definition of the carbon taxes will change if it comes to well to wake. And that's where the kind of fuel which you are going to use is not necessary that today it sounds like a green fuel, but tomorrow when the well to wake system starts, the same fuel could be sounding like it is worse than the HFOs, in terms of emission, because you are counting the whole chain of the production of that fuel. So I think yes, we would be having a combination of different type of the fuels. Definitely e-fuels will be also one of them. But then this industry will end up having multiple solutions available, and the people have to choose the solution what fits to them. Because, for example, let's say fuel EU, which talks about well to wake. If my ships are not going to the European Union, probably that is the best solution for me. But if my ships are exposed to the European voice, then I know that this solution is going to cause me the same trouble, the same carbon taxes what a normal conventional ship would be doing it like. So again, once the regulations are more clear, the ship owners would have to take the decisions according to the commercial, the nature of their voyages, where they are calling and other things. And one of the most important player in this whole thing is your commercial player, your charterers. They have to come on board, because unless they come on board, it is very difficult for the ship owners to decide what they are going to supply and what they are going to build.
Thank you. So Rajnish, of the plethora of alternate fuels currently available, we understand LNG is the low-hanging fruit. But apart from them, hydrogen, ammonia, and the other fuels in mix, how do you see them panning out? And is there any recommendation for the port operators or for the ship owners to plan around them? Like hydrogen bunkering has been mandated. There is a requirement for Deen Dayal port to start preparing for hydrogen bunkering. So what's the view around that?
Yeah, so definitely these fuels would come up, whether it comes up in 5 years or 10 years, we don't know, but the fact is LNG is there today. So LNG, maybe we may call it a transition fuel, but definitely is going to be there for the next 25-30 years for sure. Hydrogen and ammonia would thereafter come, and I don't know what all new technologies would evolve. I'd come to more about, once again, on the entire supply chain. Now we just heard what are the alternative fuels, and here again we are talking only about shipping. The supply chain is not just shipping, it's also the port equipment, the inland haulage and all. So that's where we are going to see a lot of changes happening, wherein the trailer that's moving would switch over to electricity. So as a port operator, I'll have to ensure that I've got electric supply for the trailer, the charging point for the trailer that comes in. I'll also see that the warehouses which are around me are running on solar panels, because we have quite good weather in this country wherein a lot of solar electricity can be generated. So those are the areas where we will see major changes happening, which is on the inland side. That is the interland part is what I'm talking about. about, and which is primarily electricity. Not much of, I don't foresee much of trucks running on hydrogen or LNG in the near future, although there have been few experimental projects going on, but it would soon be switching over to electricity. And on the marine part, we already heard what Sanjeev was talking about, so it has to be ammonia and hydrogen later.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you all. That's all for the session today.